What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and we are getting some details on the, I guess you would call it, female-centric or all-female Star Wars series, The Acolyte. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I want to be very clear. My critics won't watch the video; they'll just look at the title and say, "Ooh, he's molding about an all." Look, 100%. An all-female Star Wars show can exist, and it might even be good. Honestly, if you had done Rangers of the New Republic or many of the female characters, for example, in The Mandalorian, if you had put them together, there are several episodes that were definitely led by the female cast, and I thought they were excellent. The problem is, where you get into trouble is kind of saying, hey, we want this to be all female, and then we fill it, like we backfill in to make sure that happens. And also, when you put Leslie Headland in charge of it, people forget who Leslie Headland is now. Remember, she is the assistant of one of the most infamous, if not the most infamous people ever named Harvey, at least in our lifetime. That means she likely knew about all of his shenanigans and what he was up to and the women that he was predating and all this stuff, and never said anything as far as I know. Now, maybe she had testified against him or something like that. It's possible. And she landed a lucrative job for Star Wars. And just a brief preview of what we're in for. This via Data Racer 117, always worth a follow. Leslie Headland interview on her new show. Quote, thinks Star Wars is about politics and fan opinions aren't valid. Hired a writer who's never seen Star Wars. Female and queer representation is a top priority. Quote, I literally cry whenever I see it. This is going to be a train wreck. Let's take a look at AV Club interview. Leslie Headland's favorite Star Wars is the Star Wars you make your own. Some clips CBR. The Acolyte showrunner, Leslie Headland, explains why the representation of Star Wars is so important to her, explains hiring a writer who hasn't watched Star Wars to help with the Disney Plus series. Now, on the face value, maybe you do want to bring in some fresh blood. Sometimes you can't see the forest from the trees, and kind of being too traditionalist in terms of Star Wars, I could see that being a preventative factor for having something new. That said, when I know what I know of the Star Wars fandom, this isn't something likely to be well received. There is an unspoken rule, and you can call it gatekeeping, and I don't care. I support gatekeeping. There is this kind of base level of respect that the Star Wars fandom would hope that people in these big positions would have. You could see this. Leslie Headland isn't worried about the passionate fan base of the franchise when it comes to crafting her show. So perhaps a less than charitable interpretation of that is simply she doesn't care what your opinions are or what the opinions of the fans are. Then you have Leslie Headland says she hopes to keep, quote, reflecting George Lucas' political themes in the Disney Plus series. It's truly what he was interested in talking about and looking at and digging into. I don't know about all that. Certainly there are political elements, especially about fascism in these films, that George Lucas has spoken at length about, but I don't think that's what drove him to create Star Wars. Let's look at just some excerpts from the AV Club. And this goes for popular space, okay, which is no one inspired George. And this goes for ideology as well. I mean, it's funny because a lot of the feedback that I'll get, and I use the term feedback very lightly, but when I do go on social media, the feedback is don't make Star Wars political. I'm like, George Lucas made it political. Those are political films. And again, this is a common straw man argument from people that want to cram modern day politics into various fandoms. When people say, don't make something political, they're saying, like, don't cram on the nose modern day politics into whatever it is that they're into, whether it's a video game or something. Like, you can have like a crazy ruler, a fascist ruler in a video game, but maybe don't make them look exactly like Donald Trump. That's like the cringe level. You can have these themes and that's okay. right? And everyone's been okay with that forever. But when you have like, ooh, look at the orange Cheeto man. I mean, his name's Ronald Frumpf. It's definitely not Trump. Got him. Totally owned him. Like, that is what people are talking about. And the people that are pro cramming modern political themes into stuff willingly, in my opinion, refuse to understand that. To have power when you're creating media is just to put certain types of people that maybe aren't necessarily in normal mainstream content or media is just, I know that for people who don't identify that way, it doesn't seem that important, but to us it's huge. I literally saw an Orbitz commercial with 2 women going on vacation, and I was like, again, crying. It just hits you on a level that you don't know you're missing until you see it. What? Women have been going on vacation together for a very long time. They don't have to be dating, by the way. Now, I'm not familiar with that particular Orbitz commercial, but just like every Hollywood weirdo, 2 men can't be friends without them also to be sleeping together. The same is true of women. Look at modern day comics, modern day film. Shippers have ruined everything. Then she goes on to say, there were people like myself that were like later in life, Dave Filoni acolytes. I literally had one writer that was like, I've never seen any of them. I've never seen any Star Wars media. And she's texting me before we started the room. She's like, Luke and Leia are brother and sisters? What the? You have to feel like this is speaking directly to you, regardless of what you might be going through at a point in your life when you're going through it. That being said, as somebody that is a lesbian, every time I see gay or queer representation in media, I scream with happiness. So, okay. I mean, good for you. I think that that's stunning and brave. But again, the problem here is when you push that out in front of a good film or a good television show. She was on to say, probably, I mean, one of the things we did in our writer's room to kind of break the ice was ask who your favorite Star Wars character is. And you could tell people that I said mine. They were like, yeah, well, you're gay. That's because you're gay. But it's true. Okay. I'm not sure that that's something I would be super happy about. I mean, I'm just being honest. If you're picking a favorite character just because they, like the same parts as you, that would be no different than a straight dude saying like, oh, well, my favorite character is this guy because he's straight. Now, I get that the representation is a thing, but I would argue that you probably want a little more than that in terms of what makes a character good for you. You could see the Acolyte showrunner Disney Hadlin recently provided some insight about the forthcoming female-centric Disney Plus show. The series was announced back in May 2020 on the official Star Wars website. And look, there is absolutely nothing. Okay, I'm just be very clear. There is absolutely nothing at all that says that this show has to suck. There is absolutely a possibility that it could be very good. The problem is when more representation becomes more everything. When there's nothing inherent about the female Ghostbusters movie that made it suck. There's nothing inherent about that Ocean's 13 or whatever it was, all female, that made it suck. It was the writing. The actors, all fine in their own rights, although the Ghostbusters movie, you could probably critique them more. But the actresses in the Ocean's movie were all well established, but it was just cringe and bad. There's no reason that a movie like Charlie's Angels has to be inherently bad. But when the marketing comes out and says, men, you just ain't ready for this. I mean, they literally did that with Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, dumbest title ever. They literally had these actors and actresses from the film come out and make men feel unwelcome. And guess what? The film absolutely tanked. And I can't say that I'm surprised. Harley Quinn, one of the most beloved characters in the DC universe, I'm not sure she's ready to carry a movie by herself. Certainly not one where you're going to act hostile towards the wide variety of wide majority of fans. Certainly, Harley Quinn is beloved by men for a wide variety of reasons. There's nothing wrong with Margot Robbie as an actress, but when you made men feel like they were unwelcome at the film, we're not going to spend our money on it, and that movie's going to tank. We saw the same thing with Battlefield, Genderfield 5, where the CCO of EA said, don't like it, don't buy it. Guess what? People didn't. Sales disappointed. And now when the next Battlefield came out, suddenly they're like, oh no, yeah, this is just going back to, this is just going to go back to, what worked before, and we're not going to make any political statements. I wonder why. It's because the silent majority really does have sway in the market. For Acolyte, sure, you can see, she said, all joking aside, I think that an inclusive space means an inclusive space. But at the same time, I think that just because something has a female protagonist doesn't mean it's only meant for women. I agree. She explained, I kind of see like Star Wars is a religion. That if we kind of agree for the purposes of this interview, it is, I like to think of my show as a tent revival. You can come over if you want to. We're going to be talking about some cool stuff. There's going to be some things that haven't been discussed in canon yet. There are going to be some characters you don't know about. I would love for you to join us. I would love for you to be interested in it. And if it's not your thing, that's cool. Hey, I actually like this attitude. I do. Now, we're going to see if the show tanks, if they turn and turn on men and say that, oh, well, it's, the show, nobody watched the show because of misogyny or something like that. We're going to have to wait and see if that's a thing. But for now, it'll be just another Star Wars show because the IP has been so watered down that Star Wars shows are nothing to be excited for except for ultra normies now. And I don't want to dump on it. If you're excited for it, then I'm excited for you. If you enjoyed this video, though, I do ask, if you think I've earned it, that you click the red subscribe button down below the video. It really helps new people find the channel, and it'll be the only way you find my videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll talk to you again real soon.